The death of CJ's mother, Big Smoke's cooperation with Tenpenny, the completely incomprehensible lack of Crash's reaction to CJ's actions, leading to the destruction of the Loco Syndicate, and the very unclear thread of Ryder's alleged betrayal. All these moments clearly show how complicated and multi-threaded the story in GTA San Andreas is. At first glance, these ambiguities may be a bit annoying. After all, this is what makes it so difficult to put the entire plot together and be fully aware of what happened at each stage. It's hard to determine which events resulted from where and why it happened this way. However, it also has its advantages, like the fact that even almost 20 years after the game's release, new facts come to light every day. Coming back to the point, today we will discuss two questions that have been on the minds of players since the beginning of the game. The first of these questions will be, why wasn't CJ allowed to leave Los Santos at the start of the game? To get to the truth, we have to analyze the whole story from the very beginning. That is, from the event we witness in the introduction. I'm talking about the murder of Ralph Pendlebury. Pendlebury worked for internal affairs, and his work consisted of observing the activities of other police units. It could be said that Pendlebury was somewhat responsible for the functioning of the justice system. If there were any irregularities, he was supposed to detect them, then collect evidence, prepare a report, and finally inform his superiors about it. Pendlebury was therefore a very inconvenient person for corrupt policemen, and generally for those who inappropriately did their job. In the introduction, we can see that Pendlebury did not particularly like the methods of operation of the unit in which Tenpenny, Pulaski, and Hernandez worked. The point is that Crash, which was a gang-fighting unit, was secretly helping local criminal groups. After some observation, Pendlebury managed to collect evidence regarding all the illegal activities of the Crash officers. Unfortunately, Tenpenny and Pulaski learned of Pendlebury's investigation. The Crash officers decided to react almost immediately, and unfortunately for Pendlebury, it didn't turn out well in his case. Pulaski and Tenpenny decided to get rid of their biggest obstacle. As a result, we witnessed the last moments of Ralph Pendlebury's life. The policeman is tortured by Tenpenny and Pulaski, which takes place at the back of the warehouse in Ocean Docks, which we visit in the Gray Imports mission. Either way, Pendlebury is killed. What must be said is that the killer is Jimmy Hernandez, who is manipulated by his older colleagues. Tenpenny tells Jimmy to kill Pendlebury as proof of loyalty. In reality, however, it's about not getting his hands dirty, and what's more, having leverage over Hernandez if he decides not to cooperate in the future. As we can see during the cutscene, Hernandez is struggling with his emotions. The boy always dreamed of being a good cop. Meanwhile, at that moment, when he pulled the trigger, he became an ordinary murderer. Yes, maybe not fully conscious due to the manipulation of his friends, but still, a murderer. At this point, we move on to the game's storyline, in which the entire thread develops thoroughly. Carl Johnson returns to Los Santos after 5 years to bury his mother. Word spreads pretty quickly because Crash decides to stop CJ literally in front of an alley leading to Grove Street. CJ's short ride with the officers quickly turns into an extremely effective blackmail attempt. Pulaski shows Carl the gun that was used to gun down Officer Pendlebury. The reason behind all this is to give CJ one clear message. Either you play by our rules or we will make your life hell. You'll end up in prison where you will spend the rest of your days. From that point on, CJ had no choice. After all, if 3 policemen had testified against CJ in terms of Pendlebury's death, CJ would have been totally screwed. It's not difficult to guess who the court would believe. In such a situation, that is a fight between a boy from the ghetto and 3 policemen who have coherent testimonies and the murder weapon. The chances are not equal. What was a bit unclear about the whole action was why Crash took CJ while he was in Ganton near Grove Street, and not right after CJ left the airport terminal. It's worth mentioning this as a curiosity. As it turns out, thanks to one of the unused dialogues, it looks like it was not random at all. In one of these lines of dialogue, we see that CJ himself is surprised that it took the police so long to get to him. Their answer says it all. It turns out that the airport was controlled by the feds. If Crash had picked up CJ at the airport, it might have aroused unnecessary suspicion. In such a situation, the feds could start asking about what's happening and why the officers wanted to take CJ with them. But what would be worse for Tenpenny is that he would lose the ability to blackmail CJ. CJ would then have a perfect alibi, thanks to which Tenpenny would not be able to frame Carl for Pendlebury's murder. As we can see in this case, Tenpenny actually killed two birds with one stone. Not only did he get rid of any suspicions that he was involved in Pendlebury's murder, but also recruited another guy to do the dirty work for him. A few days after these events, specifically after the cleaning the hood mission, CJ suddenly receives a call from Hernandez telling him not to leave the city. This is Tenpenny's decision, as he wants CJ to just stay in town. A very cool fact is that in the beta version, we could receive this phone call not only from Officer Hernandez, but also from Pulaski or Tenpenny. Let's take a look at how the conversation could have been more or less. Unfortunately, the use of the words more or less here is not a coincidence, because the lines that we know about only come from CJ, so we do not know the other side of the phone calls. Fortunately enough, CJ's statements are so clear that one can easily guess everything.
What you want, Pulaski? Why would I want to leave? I love it here. Hey, Eddie, before you go fuck yourself, you thick redneck chump. What do you want? Oh yeah, of course, all my best friends framed me for murder. Yeah, I hear you.
Going further, after the cleaning the hood mission, the case of Ralph Pendlebury's murder comes to light. We can hear about everything on the radio during the next broadcast of WCTR News.
Police still have no leads in the tragic murder of Officer Ralph Pendlebury, whose body was found recently. Pendlebury worked for Internal Affairs. It was believed he was close to uncovering a huge corruption ring within the LSPD. A police spokesman denied the story.
Another message of this type can be heard after the mission called Fish in a Barrel. This time, it turns out that the court is looking for both Tenpenny and Pulaski.
Los Santos police officers Frank Tenpenny and Eddie Pulaski are being sought by government officials in order to stand trial for the murder of Officer Ralph Pendlebury. The pair, whom prosecutors claim have masterminded a huge criminal organization, have disappeared. LSPD spokespeople said they were undercover.
What seems most strange is that LSPD spokesmen are defending Tenpenny and Pulaski by lying that they are currently on a mission because they went undercover. As you can see, LSPD spokesmen are hiding the whereabouts of corrupt crash cops because they're probably involved in some of the dirty work themselves. This can be seen even during the last mission in the game called End of the Line, where many policemen want to help Tenpenny escape. However, the climax of this thread can be found in the Riot mission. It is there that Frank Tenpenny and Eddie Pulaski are to be punished in a court case for the murder of Officer Pendlebury. To the surprise of those watching the news, Eddie Pulaski does not show up for the trial. Of course, this is no surprise to us since Eddie Pulaski has died at the hands of CJ, which almost no one knew about. But what's really surprising is the fact that Tenpenny once again comes out of it all unscathed. Despite many accusations from the prosecutor, Tenpenny leaves the courtroom as a free man, all thanks to a well-played game of chess. That's because Tenpenny multiple times ordered the blackmailed CJ to get rid of witnesses and any evidence that could potentially incriminate the police officers. We saw this, for example, during the mission's Snail Trail or Misappropriation, in which the main character silenced people who could bring down not only Tenpenny, but the entire crash unit in general. To sum up this part, as you can see, the death of Ralph Pendlebury caused a lot of unpleasant events that certainly hurt the image of the LSPD services. Moreover, thanks to blackmail, CJ solved many of Tenpenny's problems, thanks to which, if not for the events of the last mission, the corrupt officer would have gone away with everything without an issue. In the meantime, let's move on to the second part of the episode, devoted to why CJ was banned from returning to Los Santos by Tenpenny after the mission, the Green Sabre. I'm talking about this cutscene in particular.
By any means necessary.
Now you stay the fuck away from Smoke and stay the fuck away from us. Otherwise, Sweet's gonna find himself on a baller's block getting in touch with his feminine side.
There are a few reasons why Tenpenny didn't want CJ back in town. The first and foremost reason is that Grove Street Families has officially disappeared from the map. The great battle under Mulholland Intersection ended in a crushing defeat for the families. CJ was taken away by the crash unit to some complete shithole, and Sweet, the leader of the gang, went to prison. Big Smoke came to power at the same time and disbanded the entire Grove Street families, including the fact that he made several gang members join the Ballas. We can even notice this during Cesar Villapando's side missions, where former GSF members take money to San Fierro to exchange it for drugs produced by the Loco Syndicate. Taking into account that there were only Ballas and Vagos on the streets of Los Santos, Tenpenny probably preferred CJ to go to this city only when he had to. Tenpenny didn't want CJ to die too soon because he could still be very useful. Another reason is that Tenpenny didn't want CJ to get to Big Smoke, who was an important piece on the Crash unit's chessboard. It's worth noting that although Big Smoke disbanded the families, expanded the Ballas, created a drug empire, and became rich, it doesn't mean that he no longer had any obligations to Tenpenny and Crash in general. CJ could be tempted not only to kill Big Smoke, but also to resurrect the Grove Street families, which could eventually disrupt the entire operation of the corrupt Crash unit quite effectively. To make a long story short, Tenpenny was very afraid of CJ's potential actions. Even CJ's activities in San Fierro strongly jeopardized the operations of the drug empire in Los Santos. Tenpenny knew that keeping CJ in Los Santos could put the entire operation at risk. In addition, Tenpenny knows he'll need CJ in other parts of the state of San Andreas. Let's be honest, people who dream of destroying the corrupt Crash unit operate not only in Los Santos. LS has basically been completely taken over. The alliance of the Ballas, Big Smoke, and Los Santos Vagos was so powerful that they simply dominated on the criminal map of the city. Furthermore, many other corrupt policemen are involved in the whole operation, and they cover the backs of this drug business, making it safe. So as you can see, keeping CJ and LS was completely pointless. Los Santos was looking great for Tenpenny's operation, and all Tenpenny had to do at that point was to do whatever it took to keep it that way. If you have any other arguments about why Tenpenny initially didn't allow CJ to leave and then come to Los Santos, feel free to share them in the comments. To continue today's topic, be sure to watch the episode about Tenpenny's plan in a nutshell. The video mentions, among other things, the green Sabre, which could be said to be the trigger for the game's storyline. In the meantime, thanks for watching, take care, and see you soon.